Hello everyone, Stjepan here. Sorry for not making any videos for about 5 days. I had no time, I wasn't in Zagreb, I wasn't at home and I just couldn't make it. So now let's continue with the Sicilian defense, with the theory. And this variation, the Prins variation I'm going to cover today, is probably my favorite way to face the Sicilian defense. And it's a variation which not many Sicilian players know that well. And it could be used as a great surprise weapon, even though there's a way for black to equalize right out of the opening if he knows what he's doing. So if you play the Sicilian defense and you play the Nidor for the dragon, you should learn how to react to the prince or to f3. So after e4, c5, knight to f3, d6. The Prins variation can't be played if black should play knight to c6 or g6 or anything else. So after d6, you play d4, the open Sicilian, cd4, knight d4, and now 99% of players with black are going to play knight to f6. And then about 99% players with white are going to play knight to c3. And that's your common way to defend the e4 pawn. Now there's another way. Of course, you could play bishop d3, queen to e1, queen to d3. Those are all dubious moves, but there's another good way to defend, and that's the Prins variation, and that's pawn to f3. Now, there's an obvious problem with this move. If you don't enter variations which are similar to the dragon, in which white goes for the Yugoslav attack, or something else with the setup pawn on e4, pawn on f3, pawn on g2, castles queenside, knight to c3, bishop e3, bishop somewhere, bishop c4, bishop b3, then you are going to have problems with your king side. And in the Prins variation, white is often going to castle short, castle king side, and that's why the move f3 is weakening the squares around the black king, especially the dark squares. You can see that here. Now to this move, black has 5 ways to react. I would say there's only one good way. And there's only one variation which brings black more than equality, but he has to know what he's doing, and it's also double-edged, and he has to know theory up until move 15 in order to stand better. Now let's go over the sidelines first. The first variation white should know how to face is the move knight to c6, and this is the most boring variation. Now I will just immediately point out something. If black doesn't play e5 after f3, chasing your knight away immediately, you are always going to play c4 on move 6, and that's by far the best way to play, and you are always going to have a similar setup, and you are always going to play very much similar moves, and you're always going to try to have the same attacking plan, and that's castling queenside and attacking with g4, h4, etc., because black can't really castle queenside in these positions. So you play c4, and whatever black does, if it's not e5 on move 5, you're going to play c4, because you are trying to get the Maroczy bind, get enough space in the center, prevent black from ever pushing d5, and gain more center control. After c4, you are going to play in the next 10 to 15 moves, 10 moves, knight c3, bishop to e3, bishop to e2, queen to d2, castling or castling short. If you want to play it safer, you can play it safer as well. Both moves are okay. I just think that castling queenside could bring you more attacking chances. So after c4, in this variation, black will most often play the move e6, and this move is preparing to play d5, because after d6 and f3, black is uncomfortable, and black doesn't usually want to be pushing through the Maroczy bind after playing d6, and in this position he has to. So he has to play e6, d5, and that's the most common plan for black, and you can already see that he is going to have a hard time doing that. This variation with knight to c6, though, on move 5 is the most boring one, because black has a forcing way to equalize, to exchange the queens, and to basically get a drawn position. So if you're playing this with black, if white plays f3, then you can get a forced draw, unless white makes a mistake which you don't know how to respond to, but that's on you to figure out. So c4, e6, white should play bishop e3, so bishop e7, knight c3, castles, queen to d2, that's the setup I was talking about. Now in this position, black can push through with d5, this is move 9, and black should use the opportunity to do that. If he doesn't do that here, then at any other time this will be slightly inferior. So d5 here, you have to push through, e takes d5, e takes d5, rook to d1, you have to reinforce your position, and now this is basically an exchange of everything. Well, I will show you one way to avoid an exchange, which is the best way, but you will see that most often in your games after this variation you are going to exchange the queens and get a draw. So now knight to e5 should be played by black, that's the best move. C takes d5, knight takes d5, and here you should play bishop to e2, simply trying to castle and ignoring the fact that black is threatening to take your bishop pair. Castling is far more important in this position. So now bishop h4 check should be played, and here you should accept having your king on f2 because that's not a problem at all. So now bishop takes f2, king takes f2, and you have now you didn't lose, well, you did lose your bishop pair, but black lost it as well. And now knight takes c3, queen takes c3, rook to e8, bishop b5, bishop d7, bishop takes d7, queen d7, rook h to e1. You can see that this position is most likely going to end in a draw. The pawn structure is symmetrical. Both sides have completely equal material. There are no imbalances in the position, and on grandmaster level, I think this would players would agree a draw in this position more often than not. So that's the move knight to c6. So after f3, knight c6, just learn these 19 moves, 20 moves, and you are going to have no problem playing this against stronger players and holding equality. But knight to c6 is a slight mistake in my opinion, at least from a human perspective. I think the engines would choose this as their first move, but simply because it's the safest way to play, and long term it provides black enough chances. But I think black should play differently. We're going to go over that later on. So c4, e6, bishop e3. Just remember your setup: knight to c3, queen on d2, and black. If black doesn't push d5 here, just continue normally. You can castle queenside here. If you want to play it safe, then bishop e2, castling short. But I would recommend castling queenside. Let's go back. After f3, I would say the least popular move is the move g6, and against this you are going to simply transpose to the dragon, and knight to c3 can be played, but I wouldn't recommend it, because after knight to c3, bishop g7, bishop e3 castles, queen to d2, you are now in the mainline dragon, and you have to know a lot of theory here. And if you are white and if you play f3, then you probably want to avoid the mainline theory. So here your plan is of course to castle queenside. Black is going to attack you along the c file. You have to push your kingside pawns and attack, but that's a completely different video. But after g6, I would recommend you not playing. You don't play knight to c3. You play c4 once again. So after c4, knight c6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3. You have the exact same setup. The only difference is that black hadn't prepared d5, and he can't push through with d5. You're going to play bishop e2, castle short, and attack along the queen side. And I think white has an obvious edge here. So that's the move g6. Because in the dragon variation, if you play the Yugoslav attack, then you play f3 later on. This is just the transposition of the positions. Okay, let's go back. After f3, so g6, knight c6, another move is e6, and this is basically transposing to the variation with d6 we saw earlier on. So c4 once again, bishop e7, bishop to e3, castles, knight to c3. Black is once again going to prepare the move d5, and he's going to play knight to c6, and you are going to transpose. Now let's go over one mistake. After f3, most players with black on lower levels, especially in blitz chess, confuse the move order and they play a6. Neither players think that a6 works here, and it really does not. Because after a6, c4, white is simply better. White has a lot of control. The move a6 is completely useless here. You can see that 3 pieces are controlling this. And white is never going to be able to push through with b5. And on the other hand, white wasn't threatening to play knight to b5 in this variation either, because white wants to get his normal setup with knight c3, bishop e3, bishop e2, queen to d2, castle short or long, and get the same setup. Now after this, after a6, especially if black continues with normal play, let's say he plays e6 here, I think this is the most often played move, then white should simply play bishop to e2, and after bishop e7 castle, and let's say black castles, you start develop normally, and you can see that white has a clear edge here. White has more space, white has better attacking ideas, the b6 square is weak, the d6 pawn is weak, black can never push through with d5. You're going to play queen d2, rook ac1, rook fd1, and have huge central control, and basically have everything you want out of the position. So the move a6 after f3 is a clear mistake and a waste of time. And you are never going to be able to enter neither of positions. So never play a6 after f3. Okay, so after f3, the move I would recommend for black, and the move that brings black equality if he knows what he's doing, is e5. This move is chasing the right way, and this is by far the best option black has. To this, white should always continue with knight to b3, and black should play bishop to e7, preparing to castle. Okay, there are other options. I will show you the other ones as well. So after bishop to e7, well, black shouldn't play bishop to b7, black should play something else, but I will show you this. This is the safest way to play, and in this position, black has already equalized. So after bishop to e7, you once again play c4 and get the same positions. But in this situation, black is able to play the move a5, and you're going to have to move your misplaced knight on b3, and you're usually going to do that by moving it to d2. So if black plays a5 in this position, you have to move your bishop right away in order to be able to play knight to d2 without blocking your bishop. So you play bishop to e3. And here, if black plays a4 immediately, then knight to d2, knight c6, knight c3 castles, or in this variation, black has given up the a4 pawn, which shouldn't really be taken, but still, let me show you what's, I think, from a human perspective, a better move. That's queen to a5. And after this, you play a3, preventing the knight from entering the position, castles, bishop to e2, and here black has a slight edge. I think black has a slight edge here, but after bishop to e3, black doesn't have to play a4 immediately. Black can also play knight to c6, which is an even better move. Now knight c3, castles, queen to d2, you get your same setup. a4 here. Now you, after moving the queen, you have to play knight to c1, but I think that's okay, because you are going to play knight to d3. And knight to d7, bishop e2, knight b6, knight to d5, and you're trying to exchange the pieces here. And after cd5, black is slightly better, but I think the advantage is pretty much insignificant, and white stands okay. So this is one of the best variations black could enter. The only problem in black's position is the weakness on d6, and white doesn't really have a structural weakness yet. But let's go back. After the move knight to b3, so on move 5, black should play e5. Let me just go back to that position. So after f3, e5 is the best move by far for black. Knight to b3, bishop to e7 is the safest way to play, which we just saw, but I would recommend a much better move, and that's the move d5. And with the move d5, you are not allowing white to play c4, which is played in every variation we saw up until now. And you're basically interrupting the central control white has or could have had if you allowed it. So after d5, white only has one move, sorry, that's bishop to g5, pinning the knight and not losing a pawn, of course. In this position, black shouldn't take, because after queen takes d8, king takes d8, white has castling rights and black doesn't. So in this position, I would recommend one move for black. There's another one. Well, there are two moves which are good. I would recommend you play d4. So that's the best move. You are trying to get more central control than white has, but this could cost you a pawn. Here in this position, white should play the move c3 while the knight is still pinned. Knight to c6, increasing the defense of on d4. C takes d4. Black should play bishop b4 here. Knight c3, e takes d4, a3. Now, yeah, this is complicated. Of course, you are not losing a piece. You're not going to take here, but you have a chance to chase the bishop away, and the bishop can't retreat really. So a3, the bishop should go to e7, and now you play knight to b5, and now you are increasing the pressure on the d4 pawn, and you're going to take it back. However, after castles, knight 5 takes d4. I can turn on the engine so that you can see how much advantage black has. Okay, so this is about -1 for black, and this is why most players avoid this variation. This is perhaps the best way for black to play, even though it's not obvious why black should be better, because of course black is down a pawn. But still, for that pawn, black got a lot of initiative. So now, in this position, black shouldn't never play knight takes d4, because this allows white to equalize. Queen takes d4, bishop e6. Here, white is better, obviously. But after this, black should tactically take the e-pawn, so knight takes c4. and white should play knight takes c6. Let me turn on the engine. Queen takes d1, rook takes d1, bishop g5, fe4, bc6. And in this position, black has regained the pawn, and white will have a hard time defending the e4 pawn. So I can show you the rest of the variation, which is pretty much forced. Bishop c4, bishop g4, rook d6, rook a8 castles, rook takes e4, rook takes c6. And once again, equal material, but black is much better. Black has the bishop pair, black has a better pawn structure, black has safer pieces. You are going to have a lot of problems along the diagonals. Your king is not safe, and well, there's basically no way to avoid this, but you can find some surprises along the way, which will at least cost black a lot of time. So, okay, this is the move I would recommend, the move d4. That's risky. I will show you, well, that's risky for black, but if you learn the theory, you will be better. So after d4, white should play c3, knight c6, cd4, bishop b4, knight c3, and so on and so on. After bishop to... After d5, bishop to g5, the best move for black is to move bishop to e6, and this move is much safer than d4. Now to this, white should react with bishop takes f6. Queen takes f6 is a mistake, of course, because e can take on d5 and you are a pawn up. So now g takes f6, e takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop d5, knight to c3. This is the beginning of the variation, and this is supposed to be slightly better for black, not according to the engines. The engines think it's completely equal, but I think black is better because of the bishop pair, and black has a lot more piece activity. However, white is going to be able to castle sooner, immediately, in fact, after bishop e6 castles. And white has a lot of compensation for the bishop pair, especially the fact that black's f-pawns are doubled. So knight d7, knight to b5, you are threatening to grab the exchange or the whole rook for the moment. Bishop h6 check, king b1, king to e7, saving that, and now after knight c7, rook a to d8, bishop d3. This is how the variation would continue. Once again, this is completely equal, but I would prefer black in this situation because I would have the bishop pair, and the f-pawns actually serve a purpose and control a lot of key squares. So that's the best variation. Let's go over from the top. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, cd4, knight d4, knight f6, f3. I would recommend the move e5, and after knight to b3, you can decide whether you'd like to play bishop to e7, d5, or something else. But I would recommend the move d5. So this is the best idea, and if you are white, always play bishop g5, and here if you are black, you can either play d4, which is far more aggressive and it could give you a lot of advantage, or bishop to e6, which is safer and which will inevitably bring you equality. So okay, that's it. Those are the variations I wanted to show you. I hope you got some new ideas how to play against the Sicilian with white. f3, the Prins Sicilian, is definitely not a common variation, not something you see too often, especially not on the highest level, but I think that it could be played, well, it is played on the Grandmaster level, but not nearly as much as the Nidor for something else. But definitely a good thing to know, and if you're black, I hope you got something from this variation, and that you will learn how to defend yourself from the move f3. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching. I hope you got something from the video, and stay tuned for more chess. Once again, sorry for not uploading for too long. We are going to get back on track now. Thanks very much. Bye.